I have another question, which may not seem to be relevant at all, but I find it interesting, and that is what you make of, we talk about dreams, consciousness. What do we make of ayahuasca?
Well, I haven't taken ayahuasca myself, but I've taken a lot of other stuff. I've taken mushrooms and LSD once, or almost by a mistake, actually, which is a funny story. But anyway, there was that. There was mushrooms on more than one occasion, and ayahuasca, I'm guessing, would have similar. Of course, all herbs are different, all drugs are different, and different effects. And LSD is quite different from psilocybin, for instance, for mushrooms.
But the interesting thing about ayahuasca is that it helps the DMT production.
Sure, yeah.
So do you think it has a role within modern alchemy?
Well, everything that exists has a role in modern alchemy. That's been my point from the beginning. It's all about the process.
Touché.
But, it has a specific role, perhaps, sure. I mean, DMT, I think, my experience for instance, on psilocybin, on mushrooms, on the actual ingesting the mushrooms themselves, was valuable, and it only needed to be done once. Because what it does is it trains you, it teaches you that you can look at the world very differently than the way that you're used to, and that you can see things much more vivid and much more startling and much more luminous, and that this is one way of seeing creation. And that, to me, it proves it to you using your own nervous system to say, look, this is what you're going to see. That alone is enlightening, not to put too fine a point on it. That alone is an initiation. I mean, when you abuse it, of course, then you've lost the effect of it. But if with psilocybin, it was a question of opening up this. I'm beginning to confuse, hearing with seeing, with feeling. But at the same time, I'm looking at a Tibetan tanka that I had on the wall. I see it in absolute motion. And then I can say, oh, this is what was meant. This is what they tried to do with, this elaborate mandala with the god stamping on the lotus blossom altar. This was all suddenly in motion. This was all happening like a cartoon. And you could see it and think, oh, wow, this is what was intended. Or you could see the colors and realize this is the effect they were going for. So this kind of illumination is valuable, and I think the DMT experience is valuable for that reason too. I mean, all that I've read about DMT seems to argue exactly the way I would argue for psilocybin, but perhaps more so. So this molecule, I think it's a way of training the nervous system, or at least training consciousness that your nervous system is capable of so much more than you give it credit for, that you're using it for.
Yeah, and as Joseph Farrell said in a philosophical show we did with him, is that relearning is done by attributes, by the analogical thinking. And in that way, Sinister C phenomenon that can be induced by psychoactive drugs, it's healthy because we learn to translate. We're so stuck in the ordinary translation that, the vibrations that touches my nose, the smell vibrations are experienced as that. Completely different and distinct from the vibrations I pick up with my fingertips, the tactile vibrations, again different from the visual, from the sound, etc. So
sure.
When we get shaken out of that and we have to start to look for new connections, because that's inherent in human nature, trying to look for relations and connections, that's the problem with pareidolia, right? So, but we get that Sinister C experience where it can make sense still, even though we bypass the ordinary routes of connections. Logic, I guess we could call it. So, or rationality. And here we have an irrational way to get to the truth. Maybe this is more of a humid way than a dry way. But you know what I'm saying here.
Sure. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, that is I would say the humid way, probably, and it's a training. It's a training of the consciousness. It says, okay, my consciousness is capable of so much more. It trains your conscious mind to understand what the nervous system is all about, which again brings us back to the autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system is set up to interpret the world a certain way, and our nervous system in general is set up that way. What if we throw a monkey wrench into the works, right? What is it going to do? How is it going to react? How will it rewire itself to accommodate this new experience? I think it's valuable because the experience of the supernatural, the direct experience of something supernatural, is different yet again. Like with DMT or with psychoactive drugs, you're taking a substance which is deliberately rewiring you a little bit to show you something else. But then if you're totally stone cold sober and you have a supernatural experience, you'll understand the difference between the two. And I think that's also quite valuable, is to know that you're not hallucinating, right? When you have this experience, you're not on drugs, you're not drunk, you're not stoned. You are having an experience that has got nothing to do with the substance you've ingested, but with something that's taking place in front of you. That's something that's another thing, another event that's taking place that you have to get on board somehow, that you cannot now blame on drugs or alcohol.
No, I usually say that if you induce a hallucination or a paranormal experience, it's like looking out the window. But when you develop an ability to attain a particular condition or a state of mind or a level of vibration, then it's owned. It's going out the door.
Yes.
It's not just peeking out the window.
Exactly.
It's something you experience.
Exactly.
But in the ancient, some ancient Greek esoteric traditions, they had they had what they called earth heads. That's the people who couldn't so easily manipulate their own nervous system and trigger something in, let's say, the third eye in the pineal gland that would make them look into other dimensions. So they allowed them to experiment. It's like they had drugs, what we now call drugs, but methods that could bypass, that could accelerate or help them gain those window sights, because they were earth heads and needed a little help.
Sure.
Be that it was inhalation of some natural gas coming out of the earth, or if it was certain plants, even marijuana. It could be mushrooms, like you said. It could be fungus. It could be the mystical thing called soma. Anything that they knew to. So that it wasn't, even then they didn't say this is the way, like many in the counterculture, young people, ever since your generation actually.
Right.
And up till to now, many of them mistake this for the real experience, and in a way the baby is thrown out with the bathwater, if you see what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of an initiation, but it's not the end of the story. It just gets you started. That's about all that it is. You're perfectly right. I mean, my generation was the Timothy Leary turn on, tune in, drop out generation, right? And yeah, that was a big mistake. I mean, people doing 100 acid trips. Are you kidding me? I mean, there was no reason for that. One was enough, and in some cases more than enough. You just needed that one. You needed to have your mind open to these possibilities. Then you went on from there.
Yeah. Like, look what's possible. Now go out and gain it by yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.